Hello, I'm Dr. Annandale, and I teach philosophy at Mount St. Mary's University in Emmitsburg, Maryland. Aristotle lived during the middle of the 4th century BC. In this video, I will review his biography, major political events in Greece during his lifetime, and events and figures from around the world in the 4th century. Aristotle was born in 384 in Stagira, north of Greece. His father was the court physician to the king of Macedon, and being the son of a physician may have given Aristotle's philosophical thought its empirical focus. At the age of 17, Aristotle moved to Athens to study at the academy with Plato, who was then 61 years old and had been writing and teaching philosophy for more than 30 years. Plato's teacher Socrates was executed 15 years before Aristotle was born. Aristotle spent 19 years at the academy. He was 36 when Plato died at the age of 80. Aristotle left Athens afterwards, disappointed not to have been chosen as the new head of the academy. In Greek politics, the major event of the 4th century were the Macedonian conquests by Philip and Alexander. After he left Athens, at the age of 41, Aristotle was invited to become tutor to young Prince Alexander, then 13 years old, the son of the King Philip of Macedon. 5 years later, Philip's armies defeated the combined armies of Athens and Thebes, and 2 years after that, King Philip was assassinated, and Alexander became king at the age of 20. Aristotle was then 48 years old. The next year, Aristotle returned to Athens to found his school, the Lyceum, and he would compose most of his surviving works during this 13-year period at the end of his lifetime in Athens. In 323, Alexander, whom we know as Alexander the Great, died suddenly in Babylon, and his empire was divided among his generals, and this starts what we know as the Hellenistic period. The next year, Aristotle fled Athens after being accused of impiety, allegedly saying that he would not permit Athens to sin against philosophy twice. He died the same year at the age of 62. It's also worth knowing that the Athenian orator and statesman Demosthenes was an exact contemporary of Aristotle. Demosthenes spent his life opposing the Macedonian conquest of Athens, and he committed suicide in the year 322, rather than be arrested by agents of Alexander's successors. Looking around the world, in Persia, when Aristotle was 41 years old, Persia reconquered Egypt, which had rebelled against Persian rule during the end of Socrates' lifetime. 13 years later, Alexander conquered Persia, ending the Achaemenid Empire. In Egypt, when Aristotle was 4 years old, the last pharaoh of the 29th dynasty was deposed, and the 30th dynasty began. It would last for almost 40 years and would include the last indigenous rulers of Egypt. In the year 343, Persia reconquered Egypt, but 11 years later, Egypt surrendered to Alexander without a fight. 332 marked the end of the late period of the Egyptian dynasties and the beginning of the Hellenistic period. Egypt would be ruled by Greeks and Romans for many centuries afterwards. In Italy, the Gauls sacked Rome 6 years before Aristotle was born. The Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage were still a century in the future. Carthage spent most of Aristotle's lifetime in a series of skirmishes with Greek forces on the island of Sicily. 10 years after Aristotle's death, the Romans constructed their first aqueduct, the Aqua Appia. In India, during Aristotle's lifetime, the Sanskrit epic poems, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, were first written down. When Aristotle was in his 40s, the Nanda Empire was established. It was very wealthy and had a large army, and historians say that it was the site of 4,000 well-equipped Nanda war elephants that stopped Alexander's advance into India. The year after Aristotle died, the Nanda were conquered by Chandragupta Maurya, who established the Maurya Empire, which would rule most of modern-day India for the next 150 years. In China, the Warring States period continued, and it would be more than a century until China would be unified by the Qin dynasty. In the Americas, in Guatemala, the oldest Mayan pyramids at Tikal date back to Aristotle's lifetime. So, to sum up, contemporaries of Aristotle include Alexander the Great, Demosthenes, the first Roman aqueducts, the first Mayan pyramids, the last indigenous pharaohs, and the Ramayana. Thank you for watching today. Goodbye.